Okay, we're going to be making Unreal Engine 4 rope lantern, a rope lantern, or an example of how to make one. Unreal Engine has a cable component that we're going to be using, but the cable component in itself doesn't have any physics constraints. So we'll be applying a physics constraint separately. I'm going to start by creating a blueprint. Just call this test lantern. I'm going to drag it into the level so I can start seeing changes. And the first thing I want to do is find a base to attach the top of the lantern where it would hang from. And the second thing I would require is the lantern itself. Just going to scale this base down. All right. I want the base to be at 0, or zeroed out from the default scene root, which I'm going to use as the parent. I'm going to make the lantern rest 200 units down. I'm going to just set their draw distances because that's just something I do. I'm going to make it pretty high, 80,000 or something like that. They all have LOD on them, so I think their lowest level of LOD is only a couple hundred vertices. So for the cable component to work, I want to use a rigid body because this guy itself has no collision on it. I'm just using the custom collision, which is complex simple or something like that. One of those options. So it will block, but I want to simulate physics, and for that I'm going to need a rigid body. I'm not going to use this geometry. So let's start by adding, and then for the cable base, I'm going to attach it to the base of this mesh here. So I'm going to create a rigid body for that guy too, but he's not going to be simulating physics. So this will be the lantern base. I'm just going to size him more or less where I think he should be. It's not going to be perfect. I could have used the capsule too, sure. He's not going to be simulating, but he is going to, I'm going to set him to block all. And then I'm going to add, let's add a capsule for this guy. But first I need to parent I want to parent the base mesh to the lantern base rigid body. Right, so we're starting to get something here. So this will be the resting position, but I'll also be able to adjust the the lantern length as well. It's not going to be always fixed at that. But then I also want the cable to adjust as the lantern. Where's this thing? As the lantern you know, gets lower or higher, I want the cable length to adjust automatically as well. And I'll do that in the construction script. And then, as always, any changes that you make like this, where you're running stuff in the doing stuff in the construction script, make sure you package your game for your platform you're testing on, and make sure that it works. Don't wait for the last minute, because there are there are things that do not run in the construction script when you package. Which things I can't remember. I just know it doesn't Doesn't always do what you think it does. Right, next thing I want to add is a capsule. I'm going to call this the lantern. Let's just call this the lantern, it's fine. And then I'm going to position it. And size it where I think it should be, or where I want it to be. I don't mind that it's sticking out a little bit. I would like it maybe a little bit more. And then I think that's okay. Something like that. Now it's going to look a little bit weird when we connect it to the top here. So we might just have to let the cable run all the way in. Because this is not a chain, we're not doing a chain mesh or anything like that. Or we could just make the cable really thin. You could do that too. Right at the minute, nothing's going to happen here. So let's start simulating physics. And then make sure that you're not set to overlap all dynamic. You want to block all. You could set it to block all dynamic if you want. I just use block all. Then we have to parent, well, I want to parent the lantern under the the lantern mesh under the lantern capsule. So I'm going to just rename this to lantern mesh, and this component I'm renaming to lantern base mesh. Alright, just renaming that component name to lantern base mesh, and I renamed that guy to lantern mesh. Alright, let's just save this and let's just simulate it and see what happens. And as expected, the lantern has some rudimentary physics on it with a lot of radial spin, which I really don't like. That's obviously because it's a capsule and not a box. I could use box collision there, because it is actually shaped like a rectangle. So that's also something to consider. Your collision shape that you're using. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the cable. Unreal Engine calls this a cable component. You could type in cable there. I know it's just down here. And you can immediately see it's doing something. It just did a little adjustment. There's currently no material on here. I'm not going to fiddle with a lot of stuff here. The first thing I'm going to do is just do the attachment. To attach the base, you just need to parent it to the right place. I want it attached to the base, obviously. So that's going to be the start. And now I can use this parent offset to adjust it relative to the base here, right? And I want it to connect to this guy for the end. So the minute I do that, it's under attach end 2. It's going to jump there, and you'll see it's offset a little bit, and that's because the end location here defaults to 100 for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm going to move it up a little bit until I'm happy with the connection. And I'm also going to make it a little bit thinner. But for starters, the cable length, I want it to be 200. Because that's how many units I've moved this lantern down. It doesn't always work like that, but for now that's fine. I said minus 200, don't do that. Just 200 is fine. I'm not going to mess with a lot of these things, but the width, I don't like the width of this cable. It's obviously way too thick. I'm going to enable stiffness. Cable width, thank goodness, it's taking me forever to find it. I'm going to make it about there for now. Let's take a look and see what it looks like in the editor here. Start simulating. Yeah, so when it swings, it might look a bit better, because now it just looks like the cable's just coming out of there. Which is okay. I mean, you could connect it in different ways. So for this demo, I guess it's all right. Now, so you immediately start seeing the problem, right? So there's no way for us to make this a rope using just these components we have here. We have to tell Unreal Engine I want to constrain this capsule here as a swinging physics component to this, or a swinging swinging physics, apply swinging physics maths, I guess, or solvers against this, using the base rigid body here as a as a parent or a dominant parent, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe dominant parent not the right word. So I'm going to constrain these two rigid bodies, and it's very, very easy to do that. Let's start. So it will act like a rope. I'm just going to go down here and look for physics constraint. And there it is. Description says here, this is effectively a joint. Allows you to connect two rigid bodies together. And then you can create different types of joints using the various parameters of the component, which is absolutely true. I'm not going to parent it to anything, so I want it to be in the root of the parented to the default scene root, right? It's not like your DCC where you would parent stuff underneath your joint. That's not how this works. So when you rotate this joint, it's not what we're after. It's not what I'm after. I'm telling Unreal Engine I'm defining a constraint between this lantern base and this lantern. So keeping in mind the lantern base itself does not simulate physics. So for this guy, component name 1, I'm going to put lantern base on the physics constraint. And on the physics constraint for component 2, I'm going to put lantern, which is the cap, which is obviously the rigid body, the capsule. If you just do this, it should already work right out of the box, if I'm not mistaken. It should act like a rope. So there it is, and I can hit it. But you can see, you can kind of see what it does. It does this weird, because it's very, I don't know what the word is. It's very loosey-goosey, and it's like doesn't behave like a lantern would. I would think. The cable solver is all right. There's a lot of slack there, so my cable is probably too long for starters. So I would reduce the cable length. We're going to be setting that dynamically anyway. But it's good to just initially start doing some tests. You can always make this your base blueprint, and then create child blueprints of this and use and reuse them. So we'll be putting some stuff in the construction script in a second. But I first want to play with the physics constraint, because I'm not crazy about the way that this lantern behaves. So you'll see there should be less slack in the. Let's just go full screen. There should be less slack in the rope now. And look at that radial, yeah, that's crazy. The radial force that this thing just took there. So now there's not so much slack in the rope. This isn't that. This would be something where you would probably want not necessarily. I don't think that this lantern. Maybe if it's made of wood or something really light, because this is a little bit too. And keeping in mind, it is getting its mass. Oh no, it won't. I don't know. I don't know if they calculate the mass based on the child components too. But I do know they do automatically calculate the mass based on the size of a mesh. So if I were to click on this mesh here, it would give. Oh yeah, great. It's 0. Not sure. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So this is based on physical material and mass scale. 14.1. I'm pretty sure it's because of this guy. I've created a chandelier before, which was a really big mesh with a box, with the rigid body box on top of it, and it was a lot heavier to push around. So it could be that I didn't read all the documentation on that, but you could be able you could go in and try and override the mass scale and play with things like that to make it feel heavier when you knock against it. I'm not going to do that. I don't like messing with those unless I have a very good reason to. So what I'm going to do rather is I'm going to limit the angular limits. Set the angular limits. You don't limit the limits, you set the limits. I'm going to set the angular limits. So instead of everything just going free, I'm going to start by just limiting them a little bit. And I'm going to stick to 90 degrees for all of them. It does look a little bit weird sometimes. And then the other thing I'm going to do, I'm leaving the stiffness here on the swing limits, but I'm going to just double the damping here. And I'm going to double the damping on the twist limits too. That's all I'm going to change. And let's see the result. So if I hit this guy now, it does a little bit less of that weird. Now the other thing is you see the cable isn't giving so much slack when it changes direction, which looks a little bit unnatural. So it's almost like it's not a rope, it's almost like it's a really stiff cable. So you could play with that too. I'm not going to fiddle with that too much, because that's just, it depends on what you want, the look that you're going for, or what you think this material or physical thing is here. You can obviously then go and set your material on this to make it look, like something. Oh, that's physical material. Oh, you can also set a physical material. Oh, I don't know why you would want that. So I put something on here that looks interesting. See what happens. This is a pulsing material, comes standard with Unreal Engine. I just want to see what it looks like. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Probably would want to wash that out a little bit more. Or blowing those colors out a little bit more. What do I mean by that? Making those values go higher. Next. Let's see what happens if we. I just want to play with this for 1 second. The number of solver iterations control how stiff the cable is. I see. So let's disable stiffness. So that could be another way that you could control stiffness. I just want to see if we get a little bit more slack now, because my cable length is just there we go. It's a little bit more slacky. Actually, like that more. Yeah, I really do. I like that. I like that more. For the demo, probably in game, I'd probably go make it stiffer, just because I don't know. It looks the kind of the look I want is a little bit stiffer for that. Okay, now the next thing would be if you come in here and you move this guy. I'm probably not going to connect him to the roof. I'm just going to move him up there. And for this instance, I'm just going to drag the lantern itself capsule down all the way here. Now keep in mind you can also parent a light component on this. We could quickly do that. Just grab a light. I'll put a point light on here. Hey. Just move it to there. No shadows. Intensity 5000. Tension radius. Just bump this up a little bit and just bump this up a little bit. And we'll just make it a little warmer. Probably not 3000. I think let's leave it at 1000. I'll leave that at 7000. Parent it to the lantern. Right, so we can see the light immediately kicked in there. I'm just going to disable this light for a second. I'm going to drag the lantern down further. Oh no, that's okay. Let's see what it does. Oh, I need to drag it down a little bit further. Oh, great. That is not what I wanted to do. I forget I have a player start in here sometimes. And let's just check our frame rates. Okay, let's hit this guy. It's not terrible. It looks strange. So we've actually overstretched this cable considerably. So what I want to do is I'm just going to drag another one in here. I'm going to put him right next to him here. Right. Just to show you what I mean, when you look at the materials here, you can see there's a lot of stretching there. I'm not 100% sure if the stretching is going to go away. It should. If we do the fix now, also it's behaving. The swing is still the same, but the cable is behaving a little bit weird. I don't know if it probably looks right, but I'm not crazy about the stretching. And then there won't be the same, the correct number of, the cable length wouldn't be right for what it's doing. I'm not going to be changing the number of segments, although you probably should if it goes over a certain length, but I'm not going to do that now. So let's just in the construction script see if we can do something here. I'm just going to keep this real simple. I'm going to use the length of the capsule component itself, and then all I always do is valid. It's just good practice. Just always make sure your components are valid. You never know when this thing is going to get executed. Construction script, sure, you kind of know, but you might be spawning this dynamically in game, and then the construction script is going to fire. You might be spawning it using some condition in your game while your game is shutting down, and then who knows, the component might be in the middle of being destroyed while it's called in the construction script. I don't know. You don't know. Who knows? Crazy things can happen. I'm just going to use the local, this length here, this -175. I'm going to use that. So I'm going to get the local relative location relative to its parent. I'm going to break the vector here. And I'm just going to get the absolute of this. This reminds me, actually I need to do this absolute somewhere else too. And then if the cable is valid, I'm just going to set the cable length here. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I haven't tested it this far. So let's see, I hope it does. Right, move it out. I can immediately see it's not stretching as much anymore. It's not perfect. No, it's definitely not perfect. But it's kind of difficult to tell. See if I can force the... I don't know. It's difficult to tell. This is really, really, really stretched far. As you can see, the cable is getting a little bit too much slack there at the one end, the base end. Alright, let's drag this one down a little bit. So what I could do is just divide this by... This is just me playing around 1.3. Just make it a little less. Not sure if that's going to work. Let's pull this down as well. Not as much though, because I want to lantern. Just want to see what it does. How much slack does it get from the calculation? So it's still got a little bit of slack there at the base end, but it's not as bad. So that's kind of it. I mean, you can play with this more. So normally you would, stick this in your roof or your wherever you want to put it, and then you can just adjust your lantern here to be the height of what you're after as a once-off. You don't need to worry then about adjusting the cable length. You could also then take this a step further and set the number of iterations depending on the length, because I mean that guy is getting stretched really, really, really to the max. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't, unless you're doing some kind of physics puzzle, then it could be kind of cool. I'm not sure. You should be able to also shorten the cable, shorten the lantern. I think so. I'm just doing that to not select the component and make sure I select the blueprint. It should work. As you can see, the calculation is just slightly out on the length. Probably could make that 1.45. Just play with those values, or do it differently. Do a distance calculation between the 2 points, as long as you know exactly which 2 points it's connecting to, and then just add your little offset. And then another thing you could do, which is fun. So you see now when I simulate here, nothing happens. I have wind in this thing, and I'm not sure how to make rigid bodies respond to wind. I'm sure there's a way, and I'm sure there's plugins, and I'm sure there's a million other people that's done it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do something really simple. I'm just gonna create a little function here. For now, I'm just gonna leave it as a once-off, so I'll just call this bump. Grab the lantern. Make sure it's valid. If it is valid, you could do other things here. You could have a boolean and say, should this thing bump on begin play, or should this thing ever move on its own, or things like that. Now you could get the velocity, right? So if this thing, get the length of the velocity, and then I want to do a check. If this velocity is less than I don't know, let's go with 10, or yeah, 10. So it's pretty still. If it's pretty still, then just give it a little bump. So I'm just going to grab the lantern out here again. I've already checked that it's valid, so I can reuse this component again. From the duration of the call here to there, I mean, it's not going to suddenly become invalid. This call will have to complete first. Until they change that, it might change in future. But it's the same variable, so you don't have to check the variable every time before you call it. Just once in the beginning of the function or method is fine. All right, so what I want to do here is I just want to apply, an impulse. Difference between impulse and force is this needs to be called every frame. So you apply a force over time, where an impulse is once off. And that's how I understand it. I'm just going to add an impulse to the cable, to the capsule, right? So it's why am I applying it to the cable? That's the wrong variable. You have to apply it to the rigid body, otherwise it won't work. Okay, here we'll just make a vector. And I'm going to use a random stream, and then I would also suggest a random float, from stream, in range. I would suggest using a stream, and then you initialize your stream at some point or seed it, so you always get the same values when you play the game. That just makes for things to be more predictable if that's what you want. It's a really cool way to get rid of that RNG thing, where if you're doing something over and over and over, you can finally start building up some skill. So in this case, I'm gonna go for 3,000 and 7,500 and just apply that in all directions. I don't really care about Z, and this should be fine. And then just remember to call the function. I'm just gonna call it once, so you could put this on a timer and loop it every minute or whatever, and it's really inexpensive. I have hundreds of these scattered all over various levels. Okay, that is way too much force. I did not expect that. Did this guy lose? Wow, this is weird. I was getting the same values everywhere. Do it between 1 and 3. And that's still pretty high, but something like that. So now at least when you start your level, your lanterns are moving a little bit. I would bring this down more. I think there's something going on with my stiffness in the other ones, because I have to apply a lot of force for it to move just a little bit. Let's bring this down. And then just try it one more time. And then you can always change those values, in Blueprint, or you could create a base class in C++. So the nice thing about this is, now your lanterns at least look like they're alive a little bit, and there'll be some movement. You can obviously lower those values a lot more, but that's it. That's how you make this rope, and they're obviously still fully interactive. They should respond to other physics objects as well, so you could throw things against them. It's because they're simulating physics, and they do respond to blocking objects as well. You can see they're against the wall. It's hitting against the wall there, and it's not. It is stopping. Can we? There you go. So it's hitting. Wow. Okay, that was crazy. Let's see. Yeah, it's hitting against the wall. They should hit against each other as well. All of that stuff. That's it. That's the video. Just about creating a rope or lantern in Unreal Engine 4. Thank you for watching.